My name is Grace Veras Sealy. I've been a birth doula for a long time, but right now I'm only doing postpartum. I've been a postpartum doula and lactation counselor for 6 years and have been with lots of families, most of whom are having their first baby, but a lot of them also having their second baby. And a lot of what I learned is not only through them, but also through my own experiences of having two kids and having sort of like a tumultuous first baby situation, like most people do, or you're like, or it's like really stressful and trying to figure out like, is this normal? Is breastfeeding gonna work out? Am I doing the right thing? Is my baby meeting the milestones? Like all of these things. Um, and sorry, and then having the second baby and having it be completely different. So the things that we wanted to talk about, we wanted to give you 5 tips as you are getting ready to have your second baby, and for some people your third baby, on just like things to remember. So it's not so much like 5 prescriptions on things to do, but things to remember. And the number one thing that I would say is that even though you're a parent, you will have had, you will have been going through the same thing that you did the first time, which is having a baby, both in what that means like as a family, but also for you physically. Like your body will have been going through the same thing that it did the first time. So taking the time to really heal as much as possible and taking the time to bond with your baby is going to be really important. And this is gonna kind of like hinge on another point that I'm gonna say in a little while. But just paying attention to the fact that you don't have to jump back into parenting your first child in the exact same way as you were doing before you had this baby. So thinking about the fact that your body just grew another human being, just had another human being, however that worked out, that you have to heal the placental site, that if you had a C-section, you have to heal the C-section site, that your body is producing, it's doing all of these things. It's like liquefying fat from one side to bring it to your breast to like give it to this baby. You're like doing a lot of physical things, but you're also doing a lot of like emotional things. And you're bonding with this like new little person who, for the most part, when we are thinking about our second baby, this is what I've heard a lot from my clients, and this was my experience as well, was like, am I gonna be able to love this baby as much as I love my first baby? Like, is that gonna be a possibility? I don't see how that's gonna happen. Like, I love this baby so much, and we're so connected, and blah blah blah. And then the second baby comes, and yes, you can. Your heart does grow, and you can love your second baby as much as you did your first. But for some people, sometimes it takes a while because you have so much more to think about, so many other responsibilities with your first child. And a lot of us feel guilty about taking attention away from our first child to give to this other baby. So just thinking about the fact that it's like, this little person is brand new, it's being incorporated into the family, we need time to bond together, and my body needs time to like recover so that I can be there present for this baby and for my first baby and for my partner and for my family and however that's gonna work. So thinking about that, thinking about like, how am I going to be able to take care of my body, and how am I going to be able to like do the things that are going to allow me to have a good, successful bonding experience with my new baby. And also breastfeeding, chest feeding, body feeding, if that's something that you intend to do. The good thing about your second baby, if you attempted or if you did some breast or chest or body feeding with your first, is that the second time around it tends to be a little easier. You tend to have more milk. Your your chest know what to do. Like your milk producing tissue grows faster the milk comes in sooner. The amount of colostrum is more bountiful. So that's one thing that you kind of can take off your mind. You know, like you have better chances for it to work well the second time around, and easier and better for a better start the second time around. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, I found really hard to do myself, but this is what I tell everyone. It's like to rely on your partner, if you have a partner, to rely on your partner to parent just as much as you're parenting. And that sometimes is a really hard thing to like relinquish that control, either over the baby or over your firstborn. Because you're like, well, I know what to do. Like, I know kind of like how the deal goes. And we've been through this before. And like, I know what my child wants for dinner. And I know what my child wants, you know, that he's not going to like this for breakfast. Or like, those are not the pajamas that we wear on Wednesdays, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to just like be able to like disconnect in a way and like allow, like, if you have two people in a relationship and you're having the second baby, like, allow the other partner to be in control or like of parenting the other child. Whichever child you're not with at the moment, just let them do it. Because first of all, it's gonna take a little bit of like patience to manage that. But once you do, it really takes a lot more off your mind to be able to just concentrate on what you're doing at the time. And we all know, it's like, so for all second, you know, we've all had first babies before. We all know how hard it is to actually keep your mind on track when you have a baby. Like, sometimes you're like, I'm gonna go walk over there and I'm gonna send a text to my friend who sent me these beautiful flowers. Okay, and then you walk and you get your phone and you're like, what was I gonna do? What was happening? I was gonna do something, it was important, and you know, that mommy brain is still there. So not having like another thing, not having to micromanage your partner in parenting your child can be really helpful. That was really hard to say. Partner parenting your child. Okay, yeah. The third tip that I have is relying on your outside support circle, which in these times of COVID and like Corona is gonna look a lot different than it did previously. So in the past, we would say, you know, you should have your postpartum doula, you know, come in on the day after you come home from the hospital. You should have, maybe if your own parents want to come and visit, you should figure out like the timing for that so that you have, you know, some support with your older child, and both you and your partner can like bond with your baby at the same time. Or we would say like, have somebody come and clean your house before you have your baby, or right after, or the week after. You know, just having a lot more like people coming in and doing things for you, which we can't do that anymore, right? We can't do that at this point in time. So my recommendation would be to figure out the people that you feel that you have the most like open communication with as far as like their safety, and then relying on those people to be your support circle, that are the people that are actually going to be there with you, to help you take care of your older child, to help you take care of the baby while you're with your older child, etc. And then the other people that wish you well, that want to do all of these things for you, that want to be present for you, have them do things that they can do sort of remotely. So dropping off a meal for the family, but just like leaving it on your doorstep, or saying like, you know what, the thing that would help me the most is like doing my laundry. Can I just like put the laundry outside the door, you pick it up, and then you just drop it off folded for me? That would be amazing. And then hopefully, you know, like people will be able to do that for you. There was something else that I heard recently that I'm forgetting right now, but it was something like that was like, wow, that's so useful. Oh, like for example, if you have, if you're gonna be, let's say you feel well enough to leave the house, or to leave your apartment, you know, to go for a walk, having somebody come in who you trust and like empty your dishes, and like empty your dishwasher or do your dishes while you're away, or oh yes, creating a cart and then having someone pay for the groceries and bring them to you. That would be a really amazing thing as well. So things that are going to take off things from your to-do list that someone else can do for you, without seeing you in person, right? And so that means a lot of kind of like thinking about who those people are and who are the people that maybe one of the people that you trust, that are safe, that have been tested and have like been um, self-quarantining, can go shopping with this other person, or can go and drop off the laundry for them to do, or something similar to that. um, so that would be tip number 3. Tip number 4 would be relying on your older child's present schedule to maintain their routine as much as possible. So we know that children really thrive and really need a routine. And there's going to be a lot of like emotional changes for them when there's like this new person coming in, and they're so cute and they're so fragile, and they can't play with them right away. They're just kind of like a new baby, just sort of hangs out and cries and pees and poos, and it's like being fed all the time, and that's not so much fun for the older child, right? So keeping their routine as much as possible, as um, integral as possible, it will make a big difference in the way your older child ends up behaving with the rest of the family. um, because we know that this is like a big change for everyone involved. So having the things that can remain stable for them is really important for their well-being. So that means trying to keep the same nap schedule. If they go to like a play group, having them, still go to their play group. Having the they're just like they're eating and sleeping and like all of that sort of happen at the same time. So making sure that you're paying attention before to what their schedule is, and keeping as much of it as possible being the same. And so if, for example, every single night you lay down with your child and you read a book together, making sure that that still happens, and maybe your mom, if your mom is visiting, can be with the baby during that time. Maybe your partner can be holding the baby, or maybe you can like be feeding the baby and reading the book at the same time, like, but making sure that those things are still happening will make a big difference for everyone involved. And also knowing that there's like a schedule that's already preset for you, because I feel like during COVID, it's like, what are we doing? When are we doing what? Like, I don't know what's happening. And having someone who's like, has like a very precise, like, I go to sleep from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And if I don't go to sleep by 2:05, you're going to pay for it. So like, we know that we have to do lunch before then. We know that we have to do, XYZ, and that by this time, this child has to be sleeping. And that kind of like helps to set the schedule for you, rather than you figuring out day by day what's going on. I don't know if that makes sense for people. And then the last thing is relying, just being flexible and being kind to yourselves. Um, we don't get a medal for being amazing parents, right? We don't always do it right. We often do it wrong. Nobody knows, nobody cares. They just want, like, for you to be healthy and happy, for your child to be healthy and happy. Um, and right now, we are parenting in a time of extreme isolation, which is the opposite of what should be happening. And it's the opposite of what we always tell people, like, oh, no, you should be with your village and, rely on your village and do this and that. That can't happen at this point. So being really kind with yourself and like paying attention to your own rhythms and the things that need to happen, and then getting little bits of sleep as much as possible. It's the hardest thing, I will say, for someone with two children, to line up their schedule so that they're sleeping at the same time, or that they're like, that you can actually like sit yourself down and like close your eyes for a minute and like think about nothing. But it's really, really important, because if you are not like, if you're not working well, like if your body is not working well, your mind is not working well, then nobody else is going to be in a happy place, right? So it's not about perfection, it's about making it through. And it's about making it through like as completely as possible, meaning like all parts of yourself, so that you're not leaving a part of yourself behind because you have two children and your partner is tired and there's no one around, et cetera, et cetera. Like actually making the time to spend a little bit of time on yourself, to do something just for you. So my number one recommendation for people is always like, as soon as you're able to, as soon as you feel physically able to, just going out for a walk around the block. Just like going out and getting some like sunshine on your face, seeing other people, seeing that the world is still kind of like going around, seeing that you're part of the world. It makes a huge difference mentally for a lot of people to just like leave the house and like leave everyone behind. And just go out and like, I don't know, listen to your favorite song, or I love podcasts. I'm always like, listen to a podcast and like take your mind off of things. Just don't pay attention to the politics, don't pay attention to Corona, don't pay attention, just like paying attention to something else that's going to be just about yourself, just thinking of you, and knowing that in doing that, you're actually doing something for your family. So in taking care of yourself, you're actually really investing in your family, because if you're well, then they'll be well. So that's all I gotta say for now.
Grace, one thing that you said at the beginning that it reminded me of something I read, and I need to remember the book it was in, but it was really beautiful about welcoming a second baby, and how because somebody put in the chat box too that there's this concern that you can't love that baby as much. This was like the very first thing you said. And the imagery in the book was that love in general, but in particular love for your children, is like a candle flame. And so you have this candle burning, which is all your love for all your one baby, right? And then when you have a second, all you do is you light the second flame, but in no way does it diminish the first candle. And I remember reading that and crying for like 3 hours. I was just like, oh my God, I like get it in a new way.
Yeah.
And it's still different, like parenting too. It's like you might like one more than the other on a particular day.
Oh my God. Somebody told me that once when I was pregnant. She had two sons who were like, at the time they were like the most well-behaved children, and still to this day, like now they're grown men. But I was like, how did you like do this? They're like amazing people, like, and both of them are amazing people. Like, how did you manage this? She's like, it's hard. You just treat them like people. And you have to be okay with yourself, like loving one more than the other sometimes. And I was like, never. I could never love one child more than the other. That would be so unfair. And I was like, now I get it. Now I totally get it. You like one other. Sometimes you're like, holy God, I can't stand this kid right now.
No, I think it's true. I think it's important for us to give people permission for that. And like everybody has a season, like when my daughter was learning how to write letters, it was like very exciting and was like, oh, we're going to like pay a little bit more attention to you, because the other one was like really steady. And then, like when your new baby like learns how to crawl, the whole family is going to be revolved around like watching this baby crawl or watching this baby roll over. So not trying to give them an equal amount of attention in a 24-hour period or even a week period, but it's like a general thing, that you can pay attention to. I think that's helpful. And then the other thing that I thought of, and then folks should just write in more questions or ask, but the other thing I was thinking specifically about sleep was when I had my second, I just adopted my toddler bedtime, and at least 3 nights a week was going to bed before 9 p.m. And I did that because I wasn't surviving not doing that.
Yeah.
But I think it was the thing that really saved me, was having, a few nights a week where when I laid down to do bedtime, because that's when we all get tired. Like, I know it, is just letting yourself go to sleep for the night. So that's a really big tip from my personal life.
Yeah. I did something sort of similar, but it was like the daytime situation. So my older one, in keeping with like her previous schedule, we were trying to figure out like how can we like save money because now I'm home and I'm not working, but still, have like some sanity. And so we decided to keep our older one in daycare 3 days a week. And then I would be home with both kids 2 days a week, which, whoa, that was a lot. But the days that she was in daycare, I would take a nap with my baby. So like when she was having her morning nap, I would drink some coffee right before. I knew exactly, I was like, she's gonna go to sleep at like 9:30. I'm gonna have some coffee, go to sleep. And then when we would both wake up in an hour, I'd be like, ding, like the coffee would have hit. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I can do stuff. And like that made my day go better, like being able to like a few times a week be able to like take a nap and know that it's like my other child is being taken care of, the baby's right next to me, I'm just gonna fall asleep, and then she's gonna wake me up when it's time to feed her. That would be, yeah, that morning nap with the baby is the best. It's so awesome. I loved it. I still have so many good memories of it. But
Yeah.
the coffee naps are like a revelation. I never knew about that, and then I was like, coffee naps, oh my God.
There was a question that came in when folks are doing intros about how we do all of this with Corona, where there's like 2 kids and 2 people all in the same house. And there too, I would say, so my kids right now are 6 and 3. I don't have a little baby, but it's still something that we are trying to figure out. And what I would try or experiment with, that's how I would say it. What I would experiment with is when assuming your partner is going back to work before you, having them see what flexibility they have in the hours they can work. Because if they could work like in 2 to 4 hour increments with a break in between, I think that would be really helpful. So for somebody to work from it would be hard, but like 6:30 to 10:30 a.m. and then be around from like 10:30 to 12:30 to have a second set of hands, so you can do a nap with one or cover for lunch or something like that, and then work again, and then maybe take a break at bedtime and then work again. It's going to be nearly impossible for someone to get a consistent stretch of work done in the house when there's 1, but certainly 2 kids at home who need things and want attention. And especially when you are newly postpartum, because you need things and hands. And yeah, like you said, Grace, I was also in the position where I pulled my daughter out of daycare because I was like, I'm home and we need to save this money. And it was the hardest 3 months of my entire life. I was so overwhelmed and found a new level of rage in me that I didn't know was possible. And the anger I felt that my 3-year-old wouldn't put her own shoes on. I don't remember being as angry as any other person ever. I was like, please put your own shoes on. I can't manage that. So I think if there is a way to get help or simplify things, all of a sudden I became a parent who was like, okay, well, we're gonna go scooting with no shoes on, and you have to find what works for you. But yeah, like you said at the end, giving yourself some some flexibility and taking pressure off because we're just trying to survive. I think that's also right when in those moments, especially when there's no other grown up to help you.
Yeah, it's hard, let's be honest. It's fucking hard to it's hard to parent, period. It's hard to parent little kids, period. And it's really hard to do it when, I'm finding it that it's almost as hard or harder to do it with my partner at home when he's working, because I have to be like, oh, you have to be quiet, or Teddy's on a phone call, or, and then I'm like, there's another grown up in this house that I can't access. Like, it's all on me, but there's another person here. So I think that, working in increments is a really good idea. But the other thing that I forgot to mention in one of my points was making sure that you each get alone time with each child every day, even if it's just 5 minutes. And that way, your older child doesn't feel like they're being abandoned, or that the baby is taking, preference over them, and the baby gets to bond with their other, with your partner, with their other parent. That was really hard for us to achieve, to be like, have you had your 5 minutes with your, older daughter today? Have you had your 5 minutes with your younger daughter today? I was with them all the time, but having alone time with each of them made it really hard, especially those days that we were not, that both kids were out of daycare. Like, when I had both of them, that was really much harder to do.
I have another thought about that, but there's this question in the chat box. Did you see this? For someone who's 8.5 years out, do you have thoughts about milk production?
Yes, and I think she left the meeting, unfortunately. I hope she comes back. Okay. But yes, I do believe that, your milk supply, once you develop milk producing tissue, it's just kind of there, even if you wean, until you go through menopause. So it kind of comes back to life with the hormones of right after you have your baby. So you go from having progesterone while you're pregnant to having prolactin when you are lactating, and that usually happens within the first 3 days of having your second baby. You have this huge spike of prolactin, and that makes the milk producing tissue that you already have produce milk, and it also creates more milk producing tissue. So yes, you can absolutely have milk sooner once you've had your second. Even if there's been a long time in between. We've heard of people that in kind of dire situations where a grandmother ends up breastfeeding her grandchild, she ends up producing milk for her grandchild, and that's because at one point she produced milk, and now she's able to do so again by increasing prolactin levels by stimulating her breast. So it's totally possible. Emily said, thoughts on toddler plus baby sleeping in the same room. I'm concerned that the baby waking up in the middle of the night to nurse will wake up my other son. The other option that I can think of is baby sleeps in the office at night and in a travel crib in our bedroom for naps during the day. I think that's it's a good question. I think I'm guessing that you're saying after a certain point when the baby's sleeping longer periods. Yeah, I think that from what I've heard from other people and what's been my situation. Oh, actually, my situation does not apply here. What I've heard from other people is that once you put your second baby with the first, they both tend to sleep better, but they might keep themselves awake longer at the beginning. So I don't know. Ashley, do you have any thoughts on this?
I have some thoughts about this. This was my absolute biggest concern. But I will say partially it was because I was in a 1-bedroom apartment. So my toddler was in the room with me, and it felt like that was the only option, was all of us in one room and nobody was going to sleep. And I went over Grace, I talked to you like 4 years ago. I remember talking to everyone about it. And what I wound up doing, well, here's what I'll say. Everyone I talked to said, don't worry about it. The toddler is going to sleep through everything. And I just couldn't believe it. And in retrospect, the toddler slept through everything and it didn't matter. Like this baby could be up screaming for 2 hours because that happens with newborns sometimes. And the toddler, occasionally she'd like roll over and put a pillow over her head and be really dramatic and be like, oh, he's so loud. But it never actually interrupted her sleep. And they, like you're saying, Grace, they have learned to sleep really well together. What I wound up doing was we actually bought a different sofa that was really comfortable to sleep on. And I sort of made like a nursery in our living room so the baby and I would sleep there. Or if or my husband and I would switch and I would go to the bedroom and I'd be like, you sleep here on the sofa and can listen to the baby. And I did that. I probably only needed to do that for about 3 weeks until I was like more healed and comfortable moving around. But I did it for 6 weeks to make sure. And then we were all in one room because of space restrictions, and it was totally fine. You know, the reality is, I think we maybe forget, but we respond to babies really quickly in the night. So when they stir, like you feed them, you know, or respond. It's a different situation if you're trying to sleep train a baby who's in the same room as a toddler. And I don't have suggestions about that, but you all are a few months away. So we can get you more advice on that when you're closer to it. But certainly in the first few weeks, I think it's less of an issue than most people think it is.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, we were in a 1-bedroom apartment as well for the first 4 months when we had our second. And then even after we moved to the 2-bedroom apartment, we had set up the bedroom for my first daughter, but she still slept like on a mattress in our room for another like 2 or 3 months until she felt comfortable and she kind of like went on her own to her other bedroom. And so, yeah, I mean, it was kind of like not an issue with her. Once she fell asleep, it was like not an issue. Getting her to sleep and then getting the baby to sleep, I found that to be the harder issue, but they had different sleep times anyway. So my older one would go to sleep at 7, and then my younger one was like partying all night, you know, so we'd be in the living room, and then, you know, eventually she'd fall asleep and then we'd come in. At that time, what I always made sure was that that when I brought the baby into the room, the older one was already asleep. And I made my husband do the sleep time with my older one rather than, so that I could, if I needed to breastfeed or whatever, then I could just stay outside with my youngest. And then I would do morning time with her. So I hope that's helpful, Emily.
Yeah, I also would say one of the things we chatted about on our call getting ready for this was just baby wearing in general. And then also working up towards breastfeeding if you're planning to breastfeed while you have a baby in a carrier, which was something that I adamantly communicated, was into like a meetup with a bunch of moms, and there was a woman breastfeeding in the carrier, and I was angry at her. Like, I was just like, I don't understand how that's possible, and why do you have to do it, and all of that, and I kept trying and I couldn't figure it out. But sticking with it with baby number 2, I feel like was one of the greatest benefits that I had in terms of being able to like take my daughter scooting when my son needed to eat, or like walk home from the park in the time that I could get my daughter a nap, but like when the baby needed to eat. So having that flexibility was extraordinarily helpful. And it just took sort of tweaking what carrier I was using and how high and low they were, and playing around with it. And you know, we can talk about that more when you guys are closer to it, plan like another baby wearing call. But that's really big and now
You're breaking up, Ashley.
also really helpful for bedtimes. I wasn't happy in the bouncing. The can pick up where I left off. Just playing with the baby carrier.
Yeah, totally. And I found it super helpful when my toddler wouldn't go down for a nap. And I was like, the thing that I know is going to make her fall asleep is going for a stroll, putting the baby in the carrier and then putting the toddler in the stroller and going outside would like knock them both out. And then I could come home and just like, I would leave the toddler in the stroller and leave the baby in the carrier and just like sit quietly while they were napping. And that was like my one like moment of quiet time in the day. It was just like, I'm just gonna let this happen, and then when whoever wakes up, they'll wake up. And sometimes it was like, okay, well, I have to pee, I'm gonna have to like take this baby off. And but sometimes, like I managed to like do stuff or like read something or like listen to something and have some peace with that. That was really really helpful, like being able to wear the baby, and for like pickups and drop-offs or like going to the supermarket and stuff, like just doing anything that you need your hands for, like having the baby in a carrier is amazing. I found that using a soft carrier at the beginning was the best, and then a structured carrier later on after 3 months is what worked for me. And in the end, I ended up, like breastfeeding everywhere I went because this kid was like, whatever, I don't care if we're like on a boat, like I want to be feeding now. I don't care if we're like in the New York City subway, like give me the boob. So I had to figure it out. And I think that with time, I think that, like being the second baby, if you've done it before, then it becomes easier to like figure out like how to like maneuver your baby onto you. And so it's not as hard as it wasn't as hard for me to do the second time around as it was the first time around, as far as like feeding on the go. That was something that was just like kind of like easy peasy. Do you guys have any questions? I'm curious about like what kinds of questions you guys have that are going to have your second baby soon. Let's see, I'm trying to see. Suzanne, 14 weeks pregnant with a second. First will be 3 when this baby's born, living in Cincinnati. Yep, that's kind of like how ours was. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Can you hear me first? Can you hear me again?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Another thing that I remember chatting about was food preparation and trying to think a lot about your older child, as well as you postpartum, because if you do have the position where people can cook for you or order food in, sometimes it's much easier when you're just feeding adults as opposed to having like a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old who is pickier. And so going through the exercise of making a list of your kids' favorite foods, or like if you are able to order in from restaurants, like what do they eat from the restaurants? So, let's say that it's like pasta, because most kids are just happy eating pasta. Then how can somebody make you pasta and have like kid pasta and broccoli, and then also making it a little bit more special for you? But really giving friends and family members suggestions on how helpful for somebody to like drop off a super nice dinner for you if you still then have to make kid dinner, or vice versa. So I think that's something. And then also with what Grace was saying about doing a few minutes with each kid in the day. I really like the book called Peaceful Parents, Happy Kids. I think the author's name is Laura Markman, and she has a second siblings, maybe. But it's a book about how you can introduce the sibling relationship and be thinking about them together. And in that book, she talks about with each kid separately. And sometimes if your kid's 8, right, they're going to have a lot of ideas about what they want to do, how to spend 20 minutes with you well of time. And like an easy one is like, hey, we're going to make banana bread, or we're going to play Play-Doh, or we're going to play cards, or we're going to go for a walk without the baby. So thinking about that, so you have the list ready. And then for those of you who are planning on nursing, making like a nursing station, like having a basket of toddler activities for what you can do, or what your toddler can do or your older child can do while you're sort of stuck in a nursing chair. And so for that, I remember my daughter was almost 3, so this might be, not relevant depending on the age. But we bought like a lot of sticker books and a lot of small toys that they could unwrap and do stuff with, because it was relatively easy to like help flip the sticker pages or help pop the sticker off. Or like if they're doing Legos or things like that, there are small Lego kits or magnet blocks. And not back ordering, but buying ahead of time lots of like under $10 toys to stick in your closet. That was really good advice that I got, and having a lot of them, because there's going to be that minute, and sometimes it could be like a lollipop or something, right? Like, hey, I need 5 minutes, here's a lollipop. But sometimes it might be like a new book or a new sticker book or a new vehicle, something to buy yourself a window. Like, hey, this baby's going to go to sleep, and if the baby can go to sleep, I can play with you. Here's this thing. I will be back in 10 minutes. Like, don't die.
Yeah. It's funny that you should mention that book, because I just pulled it out again. I've been meaning, I have it in like audiobook and physical book, and I still haven't gotten through it. And I'm like, I'm gonna get through this book before September. Time's ticking. But what I just read from someone, I got this thing from La Leche League, and another woman was saying that sitting down like on the floor as you're breastfeeding your child with your other child, and just like having toys around you, can be you can end up like kind of like playing with them. All you have to do is just like be there, and having like your presence just be there. Your kid could be like handing you toys as you go along, and you can still be like part of the game, or you could be playing like with cards or something as you're feeding your child. But the fact that you are like at their level, you're on the floor and you're at their level, makes you just like be playing with them. They don't even pay attention to the baby most of the time. So I thought that was a really good one, because I remember moments of being like, what am I gonna do? And then just like sitting down on the floor and being like, oh, we just played with dolls for like 15 minutes, and now the baby's done and asleep, and I can put her down and we can go do something else. So
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Maggie just asked if we could get the tips in writing, and I will try really hard, probably in the next, like, not before Monday, but by next Monday, I'll try and write them down and post them, because I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I can send you the tips that I wrote down, and then you can add the ones that we talked about in the chat. So.
Yeah. Okay, and then Ella asked, have you done the thing where the baby gets the kid a present when they're born? Like when the older one meets the baby's gotten them a gift. Did you do that, or have you seen that with clients?
I did. I've seen clients do it, yes. And the older kid is like very excited, but they kind of don't get it. They're like, how did the baby get this for me? But they're like, it's like very exciting to get a new toy, so but I didn't do that. I was didn't have the wherewithal for that. I was just like, I got you a new baby, like, here you go. That's your toy. But
we didn't do it either. I know some people who did do it, and it was nice. My older one was very excited about the baby coming, and I mean, I'm a birth educator, so I'm a unique person, but like, I made a list for what I would do in early labor, and then we sat and worked together on her list for what I would do what she would do when I was in early labor. And she had this really long list of all these options, and one of the things was making a birthday cake for the baby. And she
Aw.
did successfully do that with my mom. And so she came in, it was the opposite. Like, she came in with this chocolate cake to meet her baby.
That's
And
amazing.
it was like pretty wonderful.
That's
So,
so great. That's wonderful. My daughter, we sent her, like, when I went into labor, we sent her to a friend who lives in the same building to spend the night, and that was like her first night away, which I was like, oh my God, there's a lot going on here. And then the next day, I was ready for her to come back, and they were like, oh, we're at brunch together. And I was like, but I want my kid back. And they were like, oh, we're at the playground. I was like, can you bring her back? Like, can you, like, I have like a baby to show her. And then it was kind of funny, but it was just like, I didn't expect for this to like take so long for you to just like bring my child back. But it was like very exciting for her anyway. She was like, oh, like she put it together. She pointed to my belly and she was like, she wasn't there. I was like, yeah, now she's out here. Isn't that crazy? She's like, so.
I had a lot of strong feelings, Grace, when people took my daughter to do stuff. That's how I got a lot of help in the first few weeks postpartum. People would come over, like my in-laws would be like, oh, we're going to take your daughter to the zoo. So to give you the day with the baby, or somebody would take her to the park, or somebody would take her on a play date. And it was really hard for me. I felt like generally pretty resentful and sad. And I don't know that there was a way around it. And I'm not sure I don't think I should have gone to the zoo at 2.5 weeks postpartum. And I don't think that she should have stayed home all day. But yeah. I guess just letting people know that might happen too. I felt very much like I was missing her life, and I just like wasn't part of it anymore. And it was really sad. And I a little bit resented the baby for like separating me from my older kid.
Yeah. I mean,
and then I'm over that now. I really like him, but that was real.
Those are like really valid emotions that we don't talk about, right? Like, we don't talk about the fact that you might feel resentful about one of your kids for the other one, or for not spending time with the other one, or like being really needy. Sometimes they're really freaking needy, and you're like, oh my God, can you just not? And they are anyway, and you just have to like deal with it. So, but what I also found, which was unexpected for me, was that with the second, anytime anybody was holding her for like like past like 5 minutes, I was like, give me the baby back, give me the baby back, give me back my baby. And it was like, I don't necessarily want to have the baby like on me, but I need to have the baby on me. Like, it was just like this very strange kind of like rage-filled situation where I was like, if you don't give me that baby, we're gonna have problems. And it was always my mom, obviously. Like, who's like
it's always the mom.
Like, I was like, come on.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I had one more thought, but then if there are more questions, like, get them in before we wrap up. But the other thought was, you mentioned, and I loved this point, that partners should step up to spend time with one kid, and we like need to do a good job stepping back and not micromanaging. And I really believe in that all the time, even with the first baby. But what I was going to add to that was, they should have time with both kids alone. Like, you should not be the only parent that's parenting 2 kids alone. And so if that means like they put the baby in the baby carrier and push the toddler for a nap, because then you get the house to yourself, especially in COVID, thinking about people that are like, we're all trapped in a house, like what is going to be a vacation for you is having nobody around you, and that you might
Right.
not want to go for a walk. You might want your partner or, you know, a grandparent or something to put both kids in a stroller or put both kids in a car and just let them take a drive for 2 hours
Yeah.
and do a car nap, so you can take a shower and you can stretch and you can like make a cup of tea and sit by yourself. And that could be like the greatest thing that happens all week.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, having your partner be like full on the same, you know, like as much of a parent as you. It's like, yeah, you have the breasts and you're feeding the baby and like, you know, whatever, but then they can do everything else. Like just because you're lactating doesn't mean that they can't be as much of a parent as you are. Like they can do literally every other thing. So, allowing them to do that and like relying on them to do that and talking about having the conversation beforehand about doing it, I think is really, really important. Being like, hey, this new person's coming and we are going to have to like really step it up because, you know, things are crazy and I really need to, you know, 100% parenting just as much as me. And then also, now that most people, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people are working from home. I feel like some parents, what I've seen happen is that some parents are like, well, I'm working from home, so I don't really need to take as much time off from work because I'm here. And it's like, but you're not really there. You're there, but you're not really there. So do take the time off. Because, you know, chances are you're not going to be able to have the vacation that you had before. You're not going to like go off to like Mexico or Spain or, you know, like whatever. Unfortunately, I know. So use the time to, you know, invest in your family and to take care of your baby and to take care of your older child. And then when it's time to go back to work, even though you'd be home, like at least you've had some time set up to like, you know, have your systems ready, sort of like have your partner sort of like a little bit better set up for time without you all the time. Yeah, and working around the schedule is like key. It's clutch for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great to see you. Anybody else have any other questions or anything that they want to say? Thank you, Ella. Really good sound. Sounds really nice. Anything that is not New York City sounds really nice.
I know. It is. Yeah. It's been nice to get out. All right, cool. Everybody, good luck. Reach out to Grace and I on email or Instagram if you have questions. We're both happy to follow up. I'll send out an email. Grace's email is in the first one, but I'll put it in a follow-up email and I'll write some of these notes up so you can refer back to them.
Thanks,
cool.
everyone.
Thanks, Grace.
Alrighty.
Bye.